What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing the Myrtles Plantation. I've been waiting quite a while to do the research on this place, and I was really excited about it. There's just something all around creepy about any haunted estate or mansion. However, to take it a step further and say it was built and said to have gained its first ghost in the pre-Civil War South, Louisiana to be exact, and then a step further than that at the fact that it's a plantation, well, you get the picture. It seems the word haunted doesn't even begin to describe this place. Unfortunately, these hauntings always seem to be connected to some sort of horrific tragedy or unspeakable suffering, and this place is no exception. As far as I can tell, it's a bed and breakfast, and it seems like the owners have no issue with exploiting these usually senseless tragedies and appalling misfortunes of the ghosts and spirits involved, because as I was searching for history of the place and trying to find a little bit about it, all I kept getting was a brief history and a way to book a room. But I can't lie, this is probably the first place I'm taking my mom after Disney World, of course, because we both love haunted places. And well, we both have had a lifelong fascination with the pre-Civil War area South, Louisiana in particular. So no indictment, no judgment, just saying. The Myrtles farm was named after the crepe myrtles, which are by definition, quote, an ornamental Asian shrub or small tree with pink, white, or purplish crinkled petals, end quote. They're seen all over the very large property. Insurgent War General David Bradford, also known as Whiskey Dave, originally constructed the house in the year 1796. Bradford arrived at Bayou Sarah, which was then a Spanish colony, and he obtained a land grant for a whopping 650 acres from the Baron de Carondelet to begin a new life. Sorry again if I'm mispronouncing. Originally, he was the only person to live there for several years till he was pardoned officially by President Adams. I'm not getting into the details as to why he was an insurgent or why he needed to be pardoned, because it's really not relevant to the details of what we're talking about, which is the haunting and or the spirits. I would love to do a history series, and I might even be bringing back my old-timey criminal series for a little while in the coming months, so something else for you all to look forward to then. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Okay, anyways, back to the alleged haunting. Some people even claim that the Myrtles Plantation is one of, if not the most haunted place in the entire United States. After he died in 1820, the plantation was sold to his son-in-law, a judge named Clark Woodruff. He immediately began renovations and completely remodeled the old mansion. Clark and his wife's relationship really wasn't a happy one, nor was their life on the plantation. They had 3 children and only one survived long enough to become an adult. While the Woodruff family lived here is when the most famous ghost story linked with the place is said to have happened. Possibly the first one too, but there's really no way of knowing that, and most likely that's not true. I just think it's the most popular. According to the legends, Clark was, quote, an honest man who cheated on his wife often. That's what a lot of the research says. He was an honest man, but he cheated on his wife. I digress. I don't know, guys. Okay, then, it wasn't long before he set his sights on one of the family's slave girls. This young girl, whose name was Chloe, had no choice at all in the matter, obviously, and had to give in to this man's sexual whims and desires whenever he decided to call upon her. She was afraid that if she didn't comply, he would send her back to the cotton fields where she'd have to work for hours under the scorching sun and where cruel supervisors used whips on them. This affair went on for a very long time, many years in fact. Eventually, though, Chloe became increasingly paranoid that Clark's wife would either straight up catch them or somehow find out about the illicit affair. She worried the wife would have her indefinitely punished, if not flat out killed, for the indiscretions of both her husband and of Chloe. Essentially, Chloe would be the only one punished, and she would be punished enough for both of them. Possibly even worse than death, being given a slow and painful torture that lasted for years, and this is what she was afraid of. This was very common back in those days, both the philandering husband with the helpless slave women and also the slave being the only one that was punished for, again, these indiscretions. So as I said, Chloe was very paranoid, thinking that Mrs. Woodruff somehow knew or was going to find out. So eventually, because of this, she started listening in on the family's conversations. She wanted to see if she could determine whether or not Mrs. Woodruff knew about it or not, and one day she was caught eavesdropping. Mrs. Woodruff ordered Chloe's ears to be immediately sliced off as punishment. So now we can see why she was so terrified of the wife finding out. After her ears were sliced off, however, Chloe began to plot her revenge. While the Woodruffs were out and about in the town or otherwise away from their home one night, Chloe slipped some poison into their food. Within days, the entire family had died from the poisoning. Everyone but Mr. Woodruff, her lover. The other slaves knew what she had done, but they were so fearful of being found out themselves that they knew what she had done and didn't come forward, that they all refused to keep her secret and decided to take matters into their own hands. They took Chloe and hung her from a nearby tree. This wasn't enough, though, apparently, because after she died, they cut her body into pieces and flung them into the river. However, this wasn't the end of Chloe, not by a long shot. She stayed by and haunted some of them, her spirit constantly lurking around and terrifying the other slaves on the property, and some say Mr. Woodruff himself. Clark Woodruff died sometime later. The tree where Chloe was hanged and the river in which the pieces of her body were said to have been flung were all a part of this property that the Myers had bought. The Myers decided the beautiful old property would make a great bed and breakfast even back then, but from day one, things were very eerie and odd things started happening almost right away. In 1992, Mr. Myers was taking some photos of the property for insurance purposes. After he got what he needed, he put the photos away and thought nothing more about them. 3 years later, in 1995, however, a researcher asked if he could use one particular photo for a postcard, and he noticed something very strange. He blew the image up and saw the ghostly apparition of a young girl standing in plain view of the camera. I'll try to put a picture on screen here if I'm able to, but I don't know if it's going to be easy to find or if it's going to be copyright or not. But look it up because I definitely see the apparition. Let me know what you guys think though. Many of the guests started reporting seeing the ghost of a young woman wearing a turban, and this is also thought to be Chloe, as that was the typical attire she would have on, specifically on her head. Mr. Myers said he didn't see anyone around at all the day that he took the photos, and in fact, he was adamant of it. Chloe is not the only apparition guests or others have encountered at the Myrtles plantation either, and she also isn't the only one who has been caught in a random photo. Some people, both employees and guests alike, have reported seeing a ghost of a girl in 18th century attire in the windows, while others have started seeing the spirit of Woodruff's children in the mirror near the room where they supposedly died. This was really creepy. Somebody out there was sending me pictures of this, and this mirror was actually in my 10 most cursed objects in the world. So this whole legend is really scary. I've seen the pictures and I believe what I saw. Again, I'll try to put it here for you. Now, there have been many skeptics, of course, and researchers who will tell you that in fact Chloe never existed at all, and therefore this is all a made-up story to gain more income for the owners of the property, saying that it's haunted in order to get people more interested in booking rooms, right? Because staying at haunted places has kind of become fashionable and trendy these days, especially for people who have no idea what they're dealing with. It's all in good fun, I guess. They point to the fact that the Woodruffs never registered a slave girl named Chloe. Like, that's their whole evidence. That's their whole argument. She wasn't a registered slave. Okay, it's not at all possible that the Woodruffs, for one reason or another, just didn't register every single one of the slaves they had working on their plantation. I mean, 650 acres is a huge property, and I'm pretty sure that would require tons of help, both inside the gigantic mansion and outside on all of these hundreds of acres. Maybe they simply didn't register all of them, and Chloe was one of the ones they decided not to put on record for whatever reason. I'm not sure how all of it worked, but I know if you were a white male judge, especially when you were wealthy also back then, you basically did whatever you wanted and got away with it without so much as a slap on the wrist or anyone even calling you out. Maybe I'm wrong. Skeptics also claim that the Mrs. Woodruff and her only adult child died in very close proximity to one another, but that it was in fact jaundice that killed them, like many people in that time. I didn't even know jaundice could kill you, but I guess it's something with your liver, so I could be wrong, not a medical doctor. Is it at all possible, though, that perhaps Mr. Woodruff, who was, again, white, wealthy, and in high standing in the community, didn't want it to get out that a slave girl that he was having an affair with murdered his family? Wouldn't that lead to people starting to ask too many questions, right? Not, I'm sure, that he was worried about being in any kind of trouble, but imagine the shame. I don't know, guys. I'm just saying the skeptic's reasoning is a bit flimsy, in my opinion. It's also said that the property that the mansion was built on, like the whole plantation, was a Native American burial ground. And that could either be the cause of so much activity as far as specters hanging around, and or it could also explain why life there was seemingly so quote-unquote unlucky for the Woodruffs and their children, and also all of the anger that Mrs. Woodruff and even Chloe in the end felt. I mean, slicing off another human being's ears because they were listening in on your conversation, a little much if you ask me. However, maybe the wife did have some kind of inkling as to what was going on between Chloe and her husband, and that's why she acted so insanely over what seems to be a small slight or infraction. However, yes, I'll admit slaves weren't treated like humans back then for the most part, so maybe this was common practice, but it's said that aside from his inability to keep it in his pants, Mr. Woodruff and even his wife were kind-hearted souls and genuinely good people. I mean, how could we ever really know? This property is reported to have at least 12 ghosts. Legends say that 10 murders were committed here as well. There's only one that's actually documented, however, and that is the shooting death of Mr. William Winter. He resided in the house from 1865 to 1871, and he is said to have been, quote, shot by a stranger, end quote, outside of the home. He managed to stumble inside where he died while attempting to climb the stairs. To this very day, guests as well as employees still claim that they can hear his final dying steps into the house and onto the stairs. This is the only historically documented murder that took place on the property. But again, I'm skeptical because how well were records taken, let alone kept back during these times? That's right, I'm skeptical of all the skepticism, guys, as usual. Okay, I'm going a bit out of order here because the only information I could find that wasn't a brief history in a reservation site was clearly written by someone who has no business writing. Let me just give you a little example of what I'm dealing with here. Quote, although it is unclear as to which is, in the Myrtles Plantation's most haunted room, it is said that the house is allegedly to be on top of a Tunica Indian funeral ground, end of quote. So please forgive me for going out of order and if I got some things wrong. I really did the best I can, and the source material was like non-existent. I'm not happy about it either, but I already have over 2,000 words written here. Okay, moving right along. At some point, a couple named Ruffin Gray and Mary Catherine Cobb bought the plantation, and then it was bought by a man named Stephen Sterling, who was one of the above-mentioned couple's children. He didn't have the property for long, however, though because there's no info on when Mary Catherine and Ruffin bought it, I'm not sure exactly for how long he owned it. This information at the same time has Mr. Woodruff living there until the 1970s when the Myers bought it, so again, bear with me here. So anyways, Sterling allegedly lost the property in some gamble he made in March of 1886. He either lost it or sold it to, depending who you ask, a Mr. Orrin D. Brooks, who then sold it to a Mr. Harrison Milton Williams 3 years later. Mr. Williams lived there with his 2 sons and his second wife in 1891. Now, Mr. Williams was injured at only 15 years old while working as a Confederate assistant courier in the Civil War, but when he bought the plantation, he gained the reputation as an honest and hardworking man when he opened up a cotton plant on the land. One night, during a severe storm, his oldest son, Harry, in an attempt to collect some stray cattle, fell into the Mississippi River accidentally and drowned. Devastated by the incident, Harrison and his wife handed over the ownership to their other son, a Surgeon Minor Williams. He went on to marry a woman named Jessie Folks and gave a place to live to his unwed sister and aunt. His aunt's name was Katie, no mention of the sister's name, but she was also referred to as a bachelor, so I swear I'm writing a strongly worded letter with proper grammar and words and sentences that actually make sense to whoever wrote this source material and allowed it to be put out this way. By 1950, the house was divided amongst the Williams successors and then purchased by a widow from Oklahoma who was a wealthy poultry farmer. This is when it's claimed the stories of ghosts and apparitions and things that go bump in the night first started circulating. That's all I have for you, boys and girls, and I must say I'm pretty let down. I was expecting this really scary research and much, much more information about the ghosts, much more historical information, like deep history into each one we see with every other allegedly haunted place almost. I didn't realize my source material was obviously written by a 4-year-old until about halfway in, so I may actually revisit this and see if I can redeem myself. Maybe the information and specifics don't exist, but I highly doubt that, as with a reputation like this place has, there absolutely has to be more, right? If this is the first video you're watching of mine, I sincerely apologize, and please go and check out something else. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but definitely not my best work. Not by a very long shot. Guys, please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed spending this time with me, and if you liked the content. Subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure your notification bell is turned on, and spread the love by sharing. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. If you have any encounters of your own with the supernatural and or paranormal, please email me at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com and I will put them in my listener encounters series. Guys, I'm up to number 13. I am working on it, but I have other content that I want to put out first. So keep sending the stories in. I want to have enough to do like 3 videos and kind of have them as my backup. Be patient when emailing and waiting for a response. I really appreciate it. If you want to check out Stemma, that's me and Steve Stockton on Friday night for Campfire Stories. That's over on Missing Persons and Mysteries channel and starts around 7:15 p.m. Eastern time. Usually we're interviewing another guest from the paranormal or YouTube community. On Sunday night, Steve and I have Fireside Chat, starts around 7:15 p.m. Eastern time, where we just chit chat with the people in the chat, in the stream. It's a good time. It's nice and relaxing. It's a good way to unwind, to end or start your week. However you look at Sunday, to me, it's the ending. I don't know. Also, on Wednesday nights, right here on this channel, you'll find a link in the description box for my live intuitive oracle readings. Come on in. I go from 7 to 7:15 p.m. Eastern time to anywhere between 11 and 11:30 Eastern time. I pull one card for anyone in the stream who wants one and wants to know what their week is going to be like. All right, we have a great time. We talk, we laugh. It's just an overall great time. Again, there'll be a link to that in the description box. No link to Campfire or Fireside right now. We're working on those. Justice for Caleb Smith always. I'll have more information for you guys coming very soon, as I always promise. Also in the description box, you'll find my interview with Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio that I did on October 7th, where I talk about my book, Missing the Fae Theory, all things Fae, and even Robot Granny. If you'd like to purchase my book, there will be links to Amazon for the Kindle and paperback version in the description box. If you want a signed copy, hit me up through email, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com, before you make that purchase. PayPal, Patreon information, and Amazon wishlist gift link if you want to make donation of any kind to the channel. All of it's appreciated. I love you guys so much. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything and can actually make you feel so good. Okay? Also, remember to be kind to yourself as well. Smile at a stranger. Always go in grace. Have your best day. Have your best night. And I'll see you next time.